I never believed one person could completely destroy your life, until my boss tried to erase my entire career. But the crazy part? It didn't start with sabotage. It started with mentorship. He trained me, praised me, pushed me forward, like he was building me up for something huge. Then overnight, everything flipped. Suddenly, I was underperforming, projects vanished from my desk, and rumors about my attitude problem started spreading. I thought maybe I'd messed up. Maybe it was me. But the more I dug, the more the puzzle pieces stopped making sense. And then one day, I opened an anonymous email. Just one message, one sentence, that exposed a level of fraud I never could have imagined. My name's Natalie Hayes, 28, Senior Financial Analyst at Beaumont Capital Advisors, right in the heart of Manhattan's financial district. When I say Wall Street doesn't sleep, I mean it literally. My life had become a blur of Bloomberg screens, overpriced matcha, and closing deals at midnight like it was some badge of honor. But here's the thing, I wasn't just another analyst hoping for a seat at the table. People in the office whispered I'd be the youngest female partner this firm ever had. And honestly, I kind of believed it. My first year, I landed 2 private equity accounts no one else could touch. The partners noticed. The board noticed. The firm newsletter literally called me the rising star to watch. Even the interns tried copying the way I structured reports. It felt insane that, in the best way, my boss, Jonathan Briggs, used to tell me I had Wall Street instincts. He'd say stuff like, "Natalie, one day you'll walk into this office and everyone's gonna answer to you." I mean, how do you not trust someone who says that? Late nights, he'd knock on my office door, lean in with that polished smile, and ask what I thought about international markets shifting. He didn't just respect my work, he respected me. Or at least, that's what I thought. Beaumont wasn't just a job. It felt like a mission. Every day I woke up thinking, this is where I'm building my future. I was proud of myself. I was proud of my seat in that room. If anyone had told me that same man would later turn everyone against me, that he'd try to erase everything I built, I would have laughed. No way, not Briggs. But success makes you blind. You don't look for enemies when everything feels like a win. Looking back now, the little warning signs were already blinking, tiny things I ignored because, well, success feels loud, and red flags whisper. A weird comment during a quarterly review. Sudden schedule changes I wasn't looped into. But I brushed it all off. I was too busy building a future, too busy trusting the wrong person. And the first real crack, it showed up in a meeting, where apparently I wasn't needed. The first time I realized something was off, it seemed tiny, almost stupid. There was this Monday morning budget strategy meeting, the one I literally drafted the prep report for, and suddenly I wasn't on the invite list. I thought it was a glitch. IT issues happened all the time, right? So I walked in like normal. Everyone turned and stared at me like I'd crashed someone's wedding. Briggs raised his eyebrows and said, "Oh, Natalie, I didn't think this meeting required your attendance." I swear my stomach did this weird drop, like missing a step on the stairs. But I forced a smile, muttered a quick "my bad," and walked out. Embarrassed? Yeah, but mostly confused as hell. After that, more glitches. Suddenly, client calls got handled by someone else because apparently I was unavailable, even though I was literally sitting at my desk. Reports I usually reviewed were reassigned to analysts who had never touched that kind of work before. Briggs would send company-wide emails praising entire teams but somehow forget my contribution, even when the project was mine from day one. I tried not to overthink it. Maybe I really was reading too much into things. Maybe this was just corporate chaos doing what corporate chaos does. But then came the performance feedback. Briggs slid a printed sheet across the table during my quarterly review. "Natalie," he said in this calm voice that almost sounded bored, "your project leadership has been inconsistent." I blinked. Hard. Wait, what? He said my deliverables needed better strategic alignment, even though every metric said my numbers were killing it. Like, I literally had receipts. But every time I pushed back, he shifted the narrative. "Well, that's your perception. Gaslighting with a tie on. Love that for me." I walked out of his office, staring at that evaluation like it was written for someone else. My brain kept going in circles. Was I missing something? Is I suddenly just bad at my job? Did I piss him off somehow? But the part that messed me up most, I still trusted him. That's how subtle sabotage works. It doesn't scream, it whispers. And it makes you question yourself before you ever question the source. I tried gathering info casually. asking coworkers if they noticed any shifts, but everyone brushed it off. Either they didn't know anything or they didn't want to get involved. And trust me, nothing feels lonelier than suspicion with no proof. But this was just the surface. The real damage hit when my biggest project, my baby, was suddenly handed to someone else without a single explanation. Losing one meeting invite was annoying. Losing one project was suspicious. But losing my biggest account, the one I built from scratch, nurtured for a year, pitched to partners with shaking hands and a hopeful look on looking for his company out for this. I want to make the most of it. Sometimes I do. That felt like someone walked into my home, took my favorite chair, and said, "Yeah, you don't need this anymore." It happened on a random Wednesday. I walked into the office balancing my iced latte and a stack of printouts, ready for a full day of portfolio restructuring. The moment I sat down, I noticed something weird. My access to the client's shared folder, gone. Just gone. I refreshed the page, logged out, logged back in, nothing. Before panic could fully kick in, I saw an email ping in. Effective immediately, the Lancaster portfolio will transition to lead analyst Chloe Andrews. Chloe, 26, smart, but brand new to major accounts. Also, the same person Briggs kept mentoring during late-night Slack sessions that magically excluded me. I stared at the screen so long my coffee went watery. No explanation, no heads up, no meeting, no nothing. This wasn't random. This was intentional. When I walked into Briggs's office to get answers, he didn't even look up from his laptop. "Natalie, we're restructuring responsibilities," he said, tone smooth like he'd rehearsed it. "It's not personal." Except it felt exactly personal. It felt like a gut punch wrapped in corporate speak. I reminded him, gently, professionally, that Lancaster was my account, that I delivered every milestone, that the client specifically asked to continue working with me. He looked up then, but not with the warmth he used to have. His eyes were cold, calculated even. "Sometimes," he said, "you get too emotionally attached to projects. It clouds your judgment." Emotionally attached? It was my job, my work, my freaking career. But arguing with him was like arguing with fog. You get nothing solid back, only more confusion. And the aftermath hit fast. Whispers in the office. People side-eyeing me like I messed up something big. Coworkers suddenly too busy to grab lunch. Even the interns who used to rush to ask for advice avoided my desk. Like whatever was happening to me was contagious. The isolation grew thick, heavy. I'd walk through the open floor plan and swear the walls were inching closer, squeezing the air out of my lungs. And the worst part? A tiny voice in my head kept whispering, "What if Briggs is right? What if you really aren't good enough anymore?" Self-doubt is a poison, and he knew exactly how to drip-feed it. But as bad as that felt, it was nothing compared to what came next. My performance review, the one that nearly destroyed me. I used to look forward to performance reviews. I mean, who wouldn't when every quarter came with praise and bonuses? But this time, walking into Briggs's office, I felt sick. My palms were literally sweating against the damn notebook I brought like I was preparing for court. He didn't offer me coffee like he used to. Didn't even pretend this was a conversation. He just slid a printed report across the table. "Natalie, your performance this quarter raises concerns." Concerns. That word echoed in my head like a fire alarm. He listed vague criticisms. Lack of leadership initiative, communication gaps, delayed deliverables. All wise. So I politely asked for specifics, something I could actually improve. His response? "Natalie, I don't have time to justify everything. Please take the feedback constructively." Take the feedback constructively? That's HR speak for sit down and shut up. I left his office shaking, angry, terrified, but also determined. Because something about that review felt scripted, rehearsed, like he'd already decided my fate before I even walked in. So I started documenting everything. Emails, meeting invites, Slack messages he accidentally forgot to send me. Project files transferred without notice. I kept a private timeline on my personal drive, dates, times, witnesses, everything. Even recorded the metrics that proved my performance was solid, sometimes even above target. Still, I wasn't ready to fully believe my own instincts. What if I was misinterpreting everything? What if I really was slipping? So I went to HR. Big mistake. I explained concerns, showed examples, even expressed that I felt targeted. HR rep smiled politely, took notes like she was auditioning for a robot role, and said, "We'll monitor the situation. Monitor the situation." Translation: do nothing and hope I drop the subject. Weeks passed. Nothing changed. In fact, things got worse. Meetings without me became normal. My accounts kept getting transferred. And whispers? Yeah, they turned into rumors I could practically hear being formed behind my back. I filed a formal complaint. HR called a resolution meeting. Except it wasn't a resolution. It was Briggs sitting there pretending to be shocked while HR asked me to reflect on my perception of workplace dynamics. Gaslighting level, Olympic medal. I walked out feeling stupid for even trying. I went home that night, dropped onto my couch, and just stared at the ceiling. I'd done everything by the book, reported, documented, escalated, and guess what changed? Absolutely nothing. But the crazy part, HR wasn't useless. They were protecting someone I had no idea I needed protection from. When you're being slowly crushed at work, you start expecting the worst every morning. So when I opened my inbox that Tuesday, I thought it'd be another pointless reminder about performance goals. But instead, I saw an email with no subject line, no signature, no sender name, just a generic encrypted address. At first, I almost deleted it. Looked like spam. But something about the preview text, just 3 words, made my whole chest tighten. Check Briggs' numbers. My first thought, someone was messing with me. Some weird office prank, but I clicked anyway. The email was short, like barely 3 sentences. Your performance issues aren't real. Briggs is manipulating your accounts to hide unauthorized fund transfers. Look at quarterly adjustments on the Cowden Fund. Start there. Unauthorized fund transfers? My brain went numb for a second. I reread the message 10 times, then 20. My heart was racing so hard I swore everyone around me could hear it. Because here's the crazy thing. Cowden Fund was my account before he shuffled it away. I knew that data better than I knew my own bank balance. And suddenly, those random project shifts, those unexplained portfolio changes, the restructuring that somehow only affected me, they all looked different. I checked the metadata, no signature, no timestamp anomalies, no traceable IP. Whoever sent it knew exactly how to stay invisible. And that scared me more than the content itself. But curiosity is a beast, and fear makes you sharper. So, during lunch, I locked myself in an empty conference room and pulled up the archived reports. And there it was. Small adjustments. Tiny percentages, easily dismissed if you weren't looking for them. But added up, hundreds of thousands missing. Maybe more. My stomach dropped to the floor. This wasn't personal sabotage. This was a cover-up. I leaned back in the chair, staring at the screen, breathing like I'd just run a marathon. I wanted to scream, or cry, or throw up. Maybe all 3 at once. I didn't know who sent that email, but they just handed me a grenade. And suddenly, every doubt I'd ever had about myself turned into something sharper, something that felt a whole lot like clarity. Briggs wasn't trying to push me out because I was incompetent. He was trying to make sure I didn't connect the dots. But trust me, what I found next made this look like kindergarten math. I spent the next 48 hours barely sleeping, clicking through old reports like a detective in a crime show, except the prime scene was my own damn career. Every line item made my stomach twist tighter. Because the more I dug, the clearer it became. Those tiny adjustments weren't mistakes, they were patterns. Patterns Briggs needed me nowhere near. One night, around 2 a.m., I finally said it out loud. He sabotaged me to protect himself. My own voice sounded foreign, like I was hearing someone else's confession. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the dim glow of my apartment. For months, I'd convinced myself I was overreacting, being dramatic, too emotional, whatever label he'd practically spoon-fed me. But no, this wasn't insecurity. This was fraud. A freaking financial felony wrapped in spreadsheets and corporate language. The craziest part? It wasn't even about me. I was just collateral damage. And that's when something inside me broke. Not the part that believed in my career, but the part that believed people like Briggs played fair. I replayed every concern he'd mentioned in those reviews, every time he lied about my performance, every moment he chipped away at my confidence. He wasn't disappointed in my work, He was terrified I was going to discover his. Let that sink in for a minute. All that anxiety I carried, the nights I cried in my bathroom like an idiot, thinking I wasn't enough, all of it was engineered, not because I was failing, but because I was too damn good at what I did. That realization hit hard as hell. I felt anger surge like heat under my skin. Betrayal, humiliation, heartbreak, yeah, all that. But mixed with something else, something fierce. Suddenly this wasn't some office drama. This was federal-level crime. And if half of what I suspected was true, Briggs wasn't just screwing me over, he was screwing clients, investors, and God knows who else. The stakes weren't just my career anymore. This was bigger, darker, scarier. I sat there gripping my coffee mug with shaking hands, thinking, what the hell did I just step into? One thing was certain, there was no scenario where I could just walk away now. He dragged me into this mess. Now he was going to have to watch me tear it open. But if I was going to survive this, I needed proof. Real, undeniable proof, and I'd have to get it without Briggs ever realizing I was onto him. I woke up the next morning with one mission in my blood: prove this. Not believe it, not suspect it, prove it. Because suspicions don't take down powerful men in finance. But I also knew one wrong move, one random question, one slip-up in a spreadsheet, and Briggs would smell blood instantly. The man could detect risk faster than Wall Street traders on caffeine. So I played it cool, smiled in the same room, easy, calm, soft green, cowboys, default. Nodded in meetings like I cared about whatever fake team real alignment he was pushing. Inside, though, I was building a damn case. I started by pulling historical archives no one checked anymore, older quarterly statements, reconciliations from funds he'd reassigned, client communication logs he thought he buried in shared drives. Then I went deeper. Metadata. Financial activity leaves fingerprints, especially digital ones. And thank God I'd spent years studying forensic accounting as a side obsession. Funny how your nerd hobbies end up saving your life. I ran comparisons, logged inconsistencies, screen-recorded anomalies, even captured metadata showing edits Briggs made at 3 a.m. on days I'd been removed from accounts. The dude was sloppy, smart, but sloppy. Every discovery was like a punch to the gut. These weren't accidents. They weren't accounting errors. They were reallocation patterns, moving funds, shaving percentages, rerouting them through shell client codes. Classic laundering behavior. Meanwhile, the anonymous email didn't show up again. Not a single new message. Whoever they were, they dropped the match and disappeared into the smoke. I needed external validation, so I used every open-source financial tool I could access without setting off internal monitoring. OSINT forums, regulatory databases, SEC filings, anything that connected Calden and the shellcodes Briggs kept sneaking into our system. And slowly, a picture formed. Transfers tied to offshore holdings, temporary accounts that closed too fast. Patterns consistent with investment fraud at a corporate scale. I could barely breathe some nights, staring at evidence that could ruin lives. His, mine, the company's, clients who trusted us with their futures. Fear gnawed at me constantly, clawing at my spine. What if I got fired before I finished collecting everything? What if Briggs already suspected me? What if he retaliated harder? But another feeling drowned the fear out, a moral obligation. He thought I'd break, but he had no idea who he was messing with. And when I finally exposed everything, the company would crack open like glass under a hammer. I didn't sleep that night. My brain was running like a freaking Wall Street server during market crash hour. Every memory of Ethan now felt like evidence. Every late meeting, every hushed phone call. Every time he suddenly changed his phone password. The old me would have cried. The new me? She was plotting. I remembered something important. The compliance department. At Hudson Equity, compliance is like the FBI of finance. You so much as forward a spreadsheet improperly and they'll roast you alive. So guess what I did the next morning? I printed fake client onboarding forms, the kind that required signatures from the VP, Ethan, and buried inside the packet, I placed a mistaken transfer authorization request with a flag, transfer to undisclosed account pending VP confirmation. I purposely left the packet on his desk before he came in. Then, I sat in my office, pretending to check emails while watching his reaction through the glass. He flipped pages, paused, eyes widened. Then, he looked right toward my office. I pretended not to notice. 10 minutes later, he stormed into my workspace like he owned the oxygen molecules around us. Hey, this transfer form, where'd it come from? I put on my dumbbell act. Oh shoot, I must have printed the wrong version. My bad. He tried acting cool, but his voice cracked, barely. Did you give this to compliance? I shook my head slowly. No, should I? That man's soul left his body. He mumbled something like, nah, it's fine, and walked away fast, clutching those papers like they were radioactive. And this right here? This was the test. If he's innocent, he'd throw them away. If he's guilty, he'd act scared. And he looked terrified. Later that afternoon, I opened his office drawer when he stepped out. The forms were gone, not thrown away, not shredded, gone, which meant he kept them. Busted. That's when I realized something else. If he really was hiding accounts, there had to be emails, interest statements, bank transfers. Everything leaves a footprint. So I did what every corporate survivor does. I befriended someone in IT. A quiet guy named Derek, who always ate lunch alone and knew everybody's passwords. I asked him casually if he ever recovered deleted emails for compliance purposes. He smiled slowly and said, "Depends who you're looking into." And that smile told me he already knew something. Derek didn't just help me. He showed me something that almost knocked me unconscious. Not only was Ethan moving money, he was moving it overseas under someone else's name. And that someone else was a person I never expected. When Derek turned his monitor toward me, I swear my heartbeat stopped cold. On the screen was an email string between Ethan and some offshore liaison. It looked like encrypted banking garbage at first, until I read the subject line. POT. Beneficiary confirmation. Natalie Brooks. Natalie, my cousin. The sister-like cousin who held my hand through my mom's funeral, who slept in my house when she pretended her apartment was being fumigated. I literally felt dizzy. That has to be a mistake, I whispered. Derek shook his head. Nah, it's tied to 2 separate accounts in Panama. Same passport scan attached. Same signature. I think my stomach actually flipped upside down. My voice came out soft, like a kid. So, Ethan's been sending her money? Derek raised an eyebrow. Sweetheart, he's funneling cash through her. Millions. Millions. Now let me be very clear. Ethan wasn't rich, not by finance bro standards. He made good money, sure, but not millions. So either he was stealing, laundering, or committing some kind of investment fraud. I leaned on the desk, staring at Natalie's name over and over like it was graffiti burned into my eyeballs. Derek lowered his voice. There's something else. There's travel itineraries, his and hers, same hotels, same weekends. I felt like someone stabbed a knife through my ribs and twisted. Not only was he betraying me financially, he was literally taking beach vacations with her behind my back. I covered my mouth, trying not to break. Derek whispered, I'm sorry, but you asked. Yeah, I asked. I walked out of IT shaking like my skeleton wanted to escape my body. I locked myself in a bathroom stall, sat on the toilet lid, and cried silently, because if I screamed, the entire 21st floor would hear. My own cousin? Sleeping with my husband? Helping him steal? Pretending to be family while pocketing money that risked my job? I wiped my face and stared at myself in the mirror. My mascara lit like war paint. I didn't look weak, I looked dangerous. That was the exact moment I decided, no more tears. Ethan wasn't my nightmare anymore, I was gonna become his. And Natalie? Oh, sweetheart, family or not, she had just declared war without knowing who she was fighting. Because the next morning, I anonymously forwarded everything to federal investigators. And when the FBI walked through our office doors, Ethan looked right at me, like he suddenly realized exactly who set the fire. The sound of heavy boots in the hallways of Beaumont Capital Advisors was deafening. My heart was pounding, but this time, it wasn't fear, it was triumph. Federal investigators in suits, laptops out, badges flashing, making their way to Ethan's office. And the look on his face, I'll never forget it. He turned slowly, eyes wide, jaw tight, and that perfect Wall Street composure crumbling like cheap drywall. For months, he controlled the narrative, manipulated numbers, and gaslit me into questioning myself. But now, the tables had turned. I didn't gloat, at least, not out loud. I just leaned against the wall, crossed my arms, and watched as he was escorted out. The whispers in the office swelled into a full-blown hum. Colleagues who had doubted me, overlooked me, or even laughed at my decline now stared like I was untouchable. Turns out, the federal investigation confirmed everything I had suspected. Millions of dollars siphoned through fake accounts, offshore shell companies, and even some of my own portfolio numbers altered to cover tracks. Natalie, my so-called cousin, was questioned too, but she played ignorant, claiming she had no idea. Whether she truly didn't know or was banking on my silence didn't matter anymore. The truth had come out. I sat in my office later that evening, the city lights flickering over the skyline, and finally allowed myself to breathe. Rebuilding my career wasn't just about reclaiming lost projects. It was about restoring trust, both in myself and in my judgment. I got my accounts back, earned a promotion and the respect I deserved. But more importantly, I'd sent a message: no one manipulates me without consequences. The aftermath reshaped the firm. Compliance procedures were tightened, executives were on high alert, and transparency became the new norm. My fight wasn't just personal, it became a blueprint for ethical courage in a corporate world that often rewards greed over integrity. I learned some brutal truths. People you trust can betray you in unimaginable ways. Systems meant to protect you can fail, and sometimes the only person standing up for what's right is you. But I also learned resilience is a weapon. Evidence is power, and courage makes the impossible feel possible. Now, when someone whispers that the finance world is ruthless, I smile, because I've been there. I faced betrayal, sabotage, and lies, and I didn't just survive. I won. So, for anyone out there questioning if speaking up is worth it, take it from me, it is. Fight smart, fight hard, and never, ever let anyone make you doubt your own strength. Because one thing is crystal clear: sometimes the most dangerous battles aren't in the market, they're in the office. And the ones you win there, they last a lifetime.